5 more hours. If Cosmos hadn't found any new problems. That's assuming, of course, things didn't go further south. It was always difficult to get a read on an AI, especially in deep space where every anomaly felt like a ticking clock. Outside, the harvester was tethered to what remained of the transport, a twisted wreck of what was once the Scopus, a commercial hauler that used to cruise the lanes between Atropos and the Dust Belt. Now, it was nothing more than another gutted carcass drifting in the void. Just another payday if I could get back to civilization. 3 more jumps, and maybe, just maybe, I'd collect the promised salvage fee. It could be enough to afford a decent meal. A real meal. Not one packed into a foil pouch. Salvage was a young man's game, they said. Not for someone pushing past 50, creaking like a rusted-out airlock. But here I was, trudging through it. After all, there was nothing left for me to go back to. No one waiting on the comm, no welcome party at the docking bay. I'd already paid for docking privileges in full. Just a routine salvage, they said. Scopus was a barely functional hulk, not worth much. I had managed to extract one intact cryopod before the reactor's containment field started failing. That was something at least. I rubbed my eyes, feeling the dull throb of a headache building behind my temples. Probably the recycled air, the stress, the radiation. Maybe just the cumulative effect of too many years chasing scraps in the void. Cosmos, my ever-optimistic AI, chimed in with its usual monotone. Estimated time to completion: 5 hours, 17 minutes. Probability of structural integrity breach, 67.8%. I grunted in response. If that radiation goes up a point in the next hour, we're getting the hell out of here. A payday is only worth it if I'm alive. Acknowledged. Current radiation levels are within acceptable parameters for continued operation. Factoring in your suit's shielding capacity and duration of exposure. Adjusting probability of mission success. 78.4%. Keep me updated. I don't want any surprises. And tell me again why we took this job. Current financial status, critical. Projected salvage value of Scopus, 12,000 credits. Probability of solvency upon completion, 92.7% solvency. That magic word. The thing that kept me crawling through the guts of dead ships, breathing in stale air, risking my life for scraps. The alternative? A slow, agonizing death on the fringes of space, or worse, going back to the corporate life I'd left behind. And that was a fate worse than any vacuum. The Scopus drifted closer to a field of stellar wreckage. Not good. I needed to get the hell out of there. As I worked, expertly slicing through a section of the hull, Cosmos pinged me. Detecting signal. Origin: unknown. Designation: emergency beacon. A series of rapidly changing numbers and coordinates flashed across my old monitor, one that probably should have been replaced cycles ago. An emergency beacon. Always a wild card. It could mean a quick payday. A ship in distress with a grateful crew and a fat reward. Or it could be a trap, a lure set by pirates. Or something worse. Or more likely, just another dead ship. A ghost in the graveyard. Run an analysis, I ordered, engaging the harvester's port thrusters to correct our course. Age of the signal: 50 cycles. Point of origin: Sector Phoenix. No identification markers detected. The signal appears to be a standard distress signal, repeating on a loop. 50 cycles? I muttered. That's a long time. Sector Phoenix. That's way off the beaten path, way beyond the trade routes. It's considered a dead zone, a place where ships go to die. Negative. No known traffic in that sector. designated as unexplored and high risk due to gravitational anomalies and a higher concentration of dark matter. Elevated number of rogue asteroids detected. A ghost signal from a ghost sector, I said. My curiosity peaked, despite the odds. The thought of a ship that had gone missing 50 years ago broadcasting a distress call from the middle of nowhere was intriguing. It could be a major find, research vessel, lost colony ship, or even valuable tech. Or it could be a complete waste of time and fuel. Either way, I felt that nagging pull of curiosity. Is it worth the risk? I asked. We're getting low on fuel. Assessing potential salvage value, high, based on the age and possible origin of the signal. Risks are significant. Distance to Sector Phoenix, 3.7 light years. Estimated travel time, 2 cycles. Probability of encountering unforeseen hazards, 78.2%. Probability of mission success, 37.5%. The odds weren't great. Any sensible spacer would turn back, finish the job, and head for the nearest port. But the lure of a big score was hard to resist. And there was something else. A gut feeling I couldn't shake. A morbid curiosity about that ancient signal. Damn it, I muttered, making the decision. Plot a course for Sector Phoenix. Let's see what this ghost ship is all about. The journey was long and tense. 2 cycles spent mostly in jump stasis, a semi-conscious state where the body is preserved while the mind drifts through a haze of memories and half-formed dreams. It was a necessary evil of interstellar travel, a way to survive the time and distance. But it always left me feeling disoriented, on edge. When we finally emerged from jump stasis, the emptiness of Sector Phoenix hit me immediately. The stars seemed dimmer, more distant. The sensors picked up strange readings, gravitational fluctuations, pockets of unusually dense dark matter, and a faint energy signature that seemed to permeate the entire sector. Not radiation, not anything I had encountered before. Cosmos, what am I looking at? The data is inconclusive. The energy signature does not match any previously recorded phenomenon. It appears to be emanating from multiple sources within the sector. Gravitational anomalies are irregular, exhibiting unpredictable variations. Caution is advised. It took another day of careful navigation, threading through the distorted currents of space-time before we finally found it. There she was, a hulking silhouette against the starlight. The North Star, a Deus-class research vessel, one of the largest ships ever built by human hands. The flagship of the Transstellar Initiative. A legend, now just another derelict drifting in the void. But something was off. The North Star wasn't just drifting. Her running lights were on. A glow emanated from various points along her massive hull. The emergency beacon? It wasn't a distress call anymore. The pattern had changed. The intervals between beeps were erratic, almost purposeful. Are we sure that's an emergency beacon? I asked. The signal is consistent with a standard emergency beacon, but with significant deviations in frequency and modulation. The cause of these deviations is unknown. It is possible the beacon is malfunctioning or has been intentionally altered. I maneuvered the harvester closer. The North Star was massive, dwarfing my ship. Her hull was scarred and pitted, marked by time, by the harsh environment of interstellar space. But there were no signs of major structural damage. No breaches. No indication of what had happened to her crew. Scan for docking ports, airlocks. Any visible damage? Scanning. No external damage detected. All systems appear to be offline. except for the emergency beacon and minimal power to the running lights. Several airlocks are accessible. However, I'm detecting unusual energy readings emanating from within the ship. I chose an airlock near the stern, one that looked to be in decent condition. I donned my EVA suit, a bulky, outdated model, and secured my tether to the harvester. All right, I'm going in. Keep an eye on those energy readings. Let me know if anything changes, and keep monitoring that beacon. Acknowledged. Proceed with caution. I engaged my magnetic boots and pushed off, drifting across the short distance to the North Star. The airlock doors were sealed, showing no obvious signs of damage. No easy way in. Any suggestions? I asked, scanning the airlock mechanism. It appears to be a standard pneumatic design. The primary control panel is unresponsive, but there is a manual override located behind a service hatch to the left. I went to work. It took the better part of an hour, lots of cursing and a couple of stripped bolts, but finally, I managed to pry the service hatch open. The internal mechanism was a mess. Frozen pistons, rusted gears. 50 years in the void will do that. Thankfully, I had industrial lubricant spray in my EVA kit, a salvage best friend. I worked the lubricant in, trying to get it moving. Cosmos, give me an update on those energy readings. The readings remained constant, no change in intensity or frequency. I felt a slight give in the mechanism after another 10 minutes of careful work. A few more tugs and the emergency release lever engaged. But before I could open the outer door, I had to equalize the pressure or risk blowing the mechanism, or worse, getting sucked into the void. Any sign of an atmosphere inside the North Star? Minimal atmosphere detected in the airlock. Pressure at 0.3 atmospheres. Composition analysis indicates a mixture of nitrogen, oxygen, and trace elements. Some unidentified organic compounds present. Minimal's better than nothing, I guess. I activated the airlock's pressurization control and watched as the needle crawled up. Slowly, but it was enough. When the pressure equalized, the inner door unlocked. I pulled it open, revealing the dark, silent corridor beyond. Cosmos, full systems diagnostic. Where are we on the ship, and what's still functioning? You are currently in the aft section of the North Star, near the primary engineering airlock. Ship-wide systems are offline, but emergency power is active in this section. The main computer core is 3 decks up near the command center. Accessing it should be our priority. I started down the corridor, the eerie silence surrounding me. The technology was old, clunky, but there was something beautiful about it, something that spoke of ambition. The North Star had once been a symbol of humanity's reach for the stars. Now, it was a graveyard. I moved deeper into the ship, the anomalous energy readings growing stronger. Something was waiting for me inside. I could feel it before I saw it. Something massive, present, but indiscernible, pushing against the ship's local field. It was like nothing I'd encountered before. I flicked on my suit's floodlights, casting a piercing beam into the inky blackness. The light cut through the shadows, revealing the source of the disturbance. A figure stood just at the edge of the floodlight's reach. It was humanoid, in shape at least, but the silhouette was deeply wrong. The proportions were distorted as if it had been assembled incorrectly. One shoulder sat higher than the other, and the torso was unnaturally wide for its height. It stood rigidly, like a statue frozen in place, its arms stiff by its sides, fists clenched. The skin, where it was visible, was grayish, almost translucent, covered in a network of raised, vein-like structures that moved slowly and unnervingly beneath the surface of the skin. The head was the worst part. It was so misshapen that I could hardly make sense of it. In the dim light, its features were indistinct, but there was no mistaking the asymmetry. Like the bones beneath had been rearranged, contorted beyond recognition. There were no eyes, only two dark, recessed pits where they should have been. For a moment, it stayed perfectly still. Then, with a fluidity that defied its grotesque appearance, it retreated into the shadows, its form melding with the darkness until it was gone from sight. The encounter had lasted only a few seconds, but the image of that thing was burned into my mind. This wasn't a mutation. This was something else. A fundamental alteration of the human form that defied biology, physics, and everything I thought I knew about the world. It was a confirmation of Wallace's darkest entries. The horrors aboard the North Star were real. I felt shaken, but I couldn't afford fear. Not now. The artifact was my only shot at survival, not just physically but financially. I couldn't leave empty-handed. I'd come too far for that. Cosmos, any luck pinpointing the artifact's location? I have identified several keywords in the later entries. Containment Laboratory, Level 3, and Observation Deck. Based on the North Star's schematics, the artifact should be in a specialized containment laboratory on Level 3, near the primary observation deck. Lead the way, I replied, gritting my teeth, and keep an eye out for any more of those things. Affirmative. I'm monitoring all sensor readings. Probability of encountering further transformed crew members is extremely high. Navigating through the ship felt disorienting. My suit's sensors continued to register bizarre energy fluctuations, growing stronger as I neared Level 3. The corridors were wider here, designed for research, but they felt even more alien. Laboratories lined the hallways, each filled with equipment now encrusted in a thick layer of dust. One room held what looked like a surgical bay, complete with a large metallic table surrounded by articulated arms and laser scalpels. Another contained rows of containment cells, their transparent doors reinforced with heavy metal bars. They were empty now, but I couldn't help imagining the horrors they might have once contained. The energy readings grew stronger as I moved deeper into Level 3. My suit's internal sensors began to register a slight but noticeable increase in atmospheric pressure, and my suit felt tighter against my skin. The onboard chronometer flickered, flashing an error message before resetting. Then the optical sensors glitched, showing a chaotic blur of numbers and nonsensical code before returning to normal. Cosmos, you seeing this? I asked, my voice tinged with unease. Affirmative, the AI replied. Fluctuations in the electromagnetic field match the energy readings. The visual distortions you're experiencing may be a result of these fluctuations interacting with your suite's optical systems, or they could be affecting your nervous system directly. Just what I needed, I muttered, frustrated. At last I arrived at the primary observation deck. The door to the containment laboratory was behind a heavy blast door, similar to the one guarding the computer core. This one, however, showed signs of severe damage, dented and warped as if something had tried to force its way out. This is it, I said, examining the damage. The artifact should be in there. Caution, Cass, Cosmos warned. The structural integrity of the door is compromised. There are also elevated energy readings coming from within the laboratory. These readings are significantly higher than any previously recorded. Yeah, well, we're not leaving without it, I replied, more to convince myself than anything else. We both know That turning back now isn't going to solve our credit problem, right? I ran my gloved hand along the warped metal, feeling the heat radiating from it. Whatever had happened here, it had been violent. Then I noticed something. Residue smeared across the door and surrounding bulkhead. It was a viscous, almost invisible substance, shimmering faintly in the dim light like oil on water. Its color shifted depending on the angle of the light. Cosmos analyzed the residue. The substance is organic in origin, Cosmos replied, but its molecular structure doesn't resemble anything we have encountered. It's highly complex and seems to be in a constant state of flux. Preliminary analysis suggests it may be related to the transformed crew members. So, whatever that thing was, it either tried to get in here or something tried to get out, I muttered. I considered my options. Forcing the door open was risky, but it seemed the only way. I could try cutting through the bulkhead, but that would take too long and might compromise the structural integrity of the entire section. I looked at the damage again. What are the odds the door's still functional? Assessment. Low, Cosmos replied. The damage suggests the locking mechanism may be jammed or damaged. However, there is a manual override. Engaging it is possible, but it carries a risk of structural failure. Nothing ventured, nothing gained, I said, a bitter chuckle escaping me as I approached the manual override panel on the side of the blast door. It was protected by a flimsy cover, which I pried open with ease. Behind it, a tangle of wires and hydraulic lines greeted me. The override mechanism was simple, a lever designed to release the locking pins in case of emergency. Here goes nothing, I muttered, gripping the lever. Cosmos, be ready to cut us loose if things go south. Understood. I've rerouted all remaining power to the harvester's docking clamps and the plasma cutter. I can sever the connection in 5 seconds if necessary. I took a deep breath and pulled the lever. With a groan, the locking pins retracted and the door shook violently. A rush of stale air hit me as the door slowly creaked open, revealing the darkness of the containment laboratory. Inside, I could make out the outline of a large, transparent cylinder in the center. Suspended in an amber-colored fluid, the artifact floated. It was a roughly spherical object, the size of a human head, with a smooth, dark surface. The surface wasn't uniform. It seemed to absorb light, while within that darkness, hues shifted and rearranged themselves like a chemical reaction, never staying the same. The rest of the lab was in disarray. Equipment lay scattered across the floor, wires snaked everywhere, and broken glass crunched beneath my boots. In one corner, a mangled spacesuit lay torn apart, as if ripped by some incredible force. Beside it, bones lay arranged in a disturbingly deliberate pattern. I stepped closer to the cylinder, and my suit went haywire. Energy readings spiked, and the tingling sensation on my skin grew more intense. The visual distortions in my helmet became more pronounced, and a sharp pain began to build behind my eyes. Despite the overwhelming sensation, I couldn't look away from the artifact. As I reached out to touch the cylinder, I noticed something else. Within the swirling colors on its surface, I could see fleeting images, distorted, unrecognizable faces twisted in agony and terror. They appeared and vanished in the blink of an eye. Suddenly, I heard a wet, gurgling noise from behind me, air forced through thick fluid, accompanied by sharp clicking sounds. I turned, and there it was. The creature from earlier. Now, in full light, it was even worse. Its skin had stretched tight over distended bones, and its growths were larger and more grotesque. One arm had turned into a mass of bony protrusions, while the other seemed to have receded into the torso, leaving a gaping cavity. One milky, clouded eye still lingered in its ruined face, staring at me with an expression of profound suffering. A tear, a single, half-formed drop, rolled down its cheek. It lurched toward me, its movements jerky and unnatural, like a malfunctioning machine. Every step was a struggle. My limbs felt sluggish, the low gravity making it harder to move. The creature reached me, and its malformed arm swung toward me. I ducked, but it struck my shoulder. My suit's integrity alarm blared as I stumbled back, losing my balance and falling hard. My helmet hit the floor with a deafening thud. This was it. I was going to die here. But then, a desperate idea sparked in my mind. I wasn't just going to let this thing have me. I rushed forward, aiming for the creature's torso, using its own clumsy momentum against it. My shoulder slammed into its chest, throwing it off balance. It collided with the containment cylinder, causing it to collapse. The amber fluid inside splashed out, engulfing the creature's lower half. The reaction was instantaneous. The fluid bubbled and foamed, releasing a cloud of acrid vapor. The creature shrieked, an inhuman, horrible sound, as its body contorted, swelling, blistering, and bursting. It was melting, its altered flesh dissolving and merging with the fluid in an agonizing dance. I didn't stay to watch the rest. I turned and ran, my legs burning with each step. "Cosmos," I gasped, my voice shaking. "Get the harvester ready. Full burn." The pain in my leg was the only thing that kept me tethered to reality as I stumbled through the corridors, trying to escape the nightmare behind me. "Cosmos. Status," I whispered. Approaching the airlock, the AI replied, its voice cold. "Oxygen levels critical. Suit integrity compromised. Probability of survival low." I staggered on, adrenaline keeping me moving, but something was wrong. Beneath my skin, something was shifting, rearranging. A crawling sensation spread through my limbs, deep and aching. My suit diagnostics flashed a warning. Foreign biological agent detected. Cellular degradation in progress. The horrifying truth sank in. The artifact, the fluid, the creature, it had infected me. I could feel it happening, the slow transformation that would turn me into one of them. I reached for the manual release on my suit's helmet. There was no hope. Not anymore. I would die, but at least on my own terms, not as one of those things. My fingers fumbled with the release as the transformation spread through my body. I had seen the end result. I knew what awaited me. In the blackness of space, greed wasn't the only thing that drove people. It was survival, desperation, the promise of something better. But for me, it was just one last act of defiance. One final decision to make, even as the end loomed. I was just another scavenger, picking through the wreckage, hoping to strike it rich. And I found something. Something that would stay with me until my last breath. The void isn't empty. It's full of things. Terrible things. And once they touch you, they never let go. My vision blurred, the darkness closing in. Time to sleep,